Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we have a very special guest, Greg Gilles from the Evolved CEO. He's a husband, father of three, entrepreneurial businessman, healer, coach, mentor, business consultant, and intuitive advisor. After 20 years of hustle and grind, success and failures, climbing the corporate ladder, Greg worked even harder to build his own business. Greg found himself with a lot of materialistic success, and on the outside, everything looked great. But on the inside, he felt like something was missing. He was unhappy, rarely fulfilled, and he spiraled into more confusion about what his real purpose really was. Greg had achieved so much, but still wasn't happy. He was stuck and lost, and to deal with all the stress, pressure, and noise in his mind, he worked harder and harder while using alcohol to switch off. Then one day, he hit the lowest point of his life mentally, spiraling into burnout and breakdown. Greg finally surrendered and opened himself up to a different kind of help. This led to a deep internal journey of healing, alignment, and spiritual work that completely opened Greg up to his truth and transformed his whole life. By continuing to heal his inner world mentally, physically, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually, he unlocked his intuitive gifts and divine purpose in life. Greg combines his healing, intuitive gifts, and advisory services to help CEOs and founders find their inner truth, peace, alignment, and happiness so that they can expand beyond their business accomplishments, identity, and material possessions. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business Growth Mindset Top Achievers Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Business Growth Mindset Podcast Series 3. I'm your host, Kristian Livolsi, and I'm incredibly excited to welcome our guest and my friend, Greg Gilles from the Evolved CEO on the show today. Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Kristian. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, mate, it's my pleasure. Now, any of our listeners would have already noticed Greg is not Australian. He lives in Australia. He is Australian in many ways, but he's actually a Kiwi. So, and he's a rugby fanatic. So where we have a lot of history in terms of we've worked together. I was one of Greg's clients, and I really love what Greg and Tracy do. Some of our listeners, you will remember we had Tracy Gilles on the show. I think it might be a couple of months ago. And I know we had a lot of great feedback. Well, this is the other half. And they are right. Yeah, well, actually, I don't know. I don't know if I'd go there. I really do like your wife. She's a pretty special person.
Why is the wife always the better half?
Because she can get into my head as well. True. The reality is two amazingly beautiful human beings. And Greg and I have tried to do this a couple of times, but things get in the way. We're both incredibly busy. And I want to hear more about why you've been getting so incredibly busy doing the transformations that you're doing. So, Greg, why don't you, because I could talk about you like I could talk about Tracy all day long, but rather than me do it, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, but also where you have come from and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So, as you stated, Kristian, I'm a Kiwi, and I was brought up in a small country town in New Zealand with 800 people, and 40 years later, there's still 800 people. So it's one of those towns where everybody knows everybody, but it was a great beginning, right? As a young kid, safe, humble beginnings, good moral upbringing. But my nature, like many of my clients and like you, Kristian, has always been very driven, very entrepreneurial, always wanting to push the boundaries, even as a young kid. So outgrowing that small country town, I went off to boarding school at the age of 14. I am a rugby fanatic, and I used to be really, really good at it. And I made New Zealand age grade rugby teams, and I was school prefect, and I was head of the hostel, and I was all those leadership positions. But what I didn't know back then that I learned in my later life as an adult was a lot of my drive was coming from a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of self-doubt, a a lot of not feeling good enough. And that, for me and for a lot of men, that's the rocket fuel that pushes us along for the first period of our life, right? So even though I achieved a lot of good accolades, especially in sport, I was also quite troubled. I'd get in a lot of fights. I was an angry young man. I didn't know where it come from. And when I went into corporate life, I chased and I climbed the corporate ladder and I had all of that success, but it was never good enough. I was never happy. I was never fulfilled. I didn't know what was going on. I climbed 3 different corporate ladders. I built multi-million-dollar businesses, moved my family over to Singapore on a big contract, and there's millions of different stories in between, right? Just never gave up, always pushing the limit, always trying to be more successful. And 6 years ago now, 2015, failed contract in Singapore, come back to Australia. I was drinking really heavily. My mental health was in a bad place because I felt like I'd completely failed my whole family and I had to bring them back from Singapore to Australia. And this was just the compounding effect of years and years and years of highs and lows and highs and lows. And I started my own business again back in Australia, 2015, 2016. The stress, the mental health, and the drinking compounded that I drove myself into a burnout and a mental breakdown. And I was having some pretty awful thoughts about myself, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep up the facade of Greg Gilles is highly successful and has got all of his shit together, because it wasn't true. On the outside, it looked like that because I had all the materialistic things. I had a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful kids, traveled the world, da-da-da-da-da-da. But the inside was the exact opposite, and it's pretty hard to hide it for years and years and years because it just compounds on top and on top and on top, right? That was the turning point of my life. I kind of feel like, look, it was the hardest point in my life, but looking back now, it was the best thing that could ever happen to me because my ego was so out of control. I would never even stop and breathe and look at the signs. I would just push harder and harder. It was like the more struggle I went through, the harder I'd work, the harder I'd drink, the more excuses I'd make. And I was just spiraling. Some weeks I'd be really good. Other weeks I'd be absolutely shocking. So that kind of is the whole breakdown to break through. But I had absolutely no intention in being a coach or a kind of, I don't like calling myself a life coach because it's so much more than that, which we'll dive into. But just for argument's sake, I never intended to be a life coach. I didn't want to deal with somebody else's shit because I wasn't even dealing with my own, right? It's just like, why do I want to take on everybody else's negativity? But I went through a 12-month healing process more around the mind, more around the early childhood programming, the belief systems, all of that sort of stuff, and really unpacked who I was, like why I behaved the way I did, why I drove myself to breaking point at everything that I did. Like I would push myself to massive injury on the rugby field. I pushed myself to mental health issues and over drinking and business. I just keep on pushing myself. And I didn't know why. I thought it was my superpower. I was just like, man, I'm just motivated. Like, why isn't everybody like this? Everybody else who's not like this, I just ridicule them and just go, well, they're just lazy.
You know, I got it. I just want to interrupt you there for just a moment. It's really interesting as you talk through these things. I realized this really quickly why, when I first connected with you, I was compelled to work with you. And you and I are very similar. And as your wife has told me many times, and we're very similar. We're both very driven people. And I'd already done a fair bit of work, but I just felt really compelled. And I can testify that for me, it wasn't a total breakthrough experience, but it was a very refreshing experience. Like, because it was just a couple of little things that, and I think if you remember correctly, that you were like, hang on a minute, you've done a bit of work here. And it's like, yeah, I've done a lot of this work because I too went through a tremendous amount of depression and, very public failures. So mine was a little different. It wasn't so much hidden. It was kind of out there in the spotlight. But phenomenal experience for me because it was about fine-tuning the things that I hadn't gotten through. But as you speaking, it was kind of like, because you and I haven't spoken in a while, and I'm like, oh wow, I remember going through that with Greg, and it's really enlightening again because I've just got I've just got this whole like wave of energy come through my body. I'm like, oh, do you remember those sessions? Oh no,
confronting but powerful.
Very confronting, but very powerful. Spot on. So yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say what you described as bang on. When I didn't do the work to become a coach, right? I did the work because I had to, because Tracy would end up leaving me. My health was shit and I was lost, right? I felt isolated. I felt stuck. I felt alone. I had a lot of anger, a lot of frustration inside of me. I felt like I was a lousy dad because it would show up with my kids. I'm either fun dad or angry dad. And I didn't want to be that guy, but I felt like I wasn't even in control of my emotions. I didn't really know who I was. So I went through that 12-month life coaching process. And what that did was help me become aware. It helped me bring the unconscious to the conscious. So I was aware of my behavior and I could make different choices. But that's not where the massive transformation come from. That was the introduction to me waking up to a different level of coaching, because all the coaching and consultancy stuff that I had hired in the past was how can Greg make more money? It was always more business. It was always fine-tuning the intellectual sword so that I could be better in the competitive arena of business, which was pulling me away from my truth and my identity. So it wasn't until I started doing the kinesiology and the energy healing and the spiritual work, and luckily this was the journey that Tracy was on, and Tracy's journey has just been freaking mind-blowing. And then she started working on me and she started healing me, and that's where the true transformation started to kick in. And this is where I had one of those epiphany moments where I went, holy shit, I have to do this for other men that are the same as me. Because when you heal and when you remove all of the facades, you can then see and feel the energy of everybody else. And you can see that so many people are hurting. But when you're broken and hurting and you're hiding and you're suffering and you're only dealing with your own shit, you think there's something wrong with you. And you just go, everybody else has got an amazing life. What's wrong with me? I need to keep this a secret, because if I show any vulnerability or weakness, then what if I fail? What if this? What if that? And then the narratives just go over and over and over, and we drive ourselves nuts.
Isn't it interesting? It's really interesting how when you're stuck in that position, you think that everybody else's life is actually quite perfect. Yeah. Now that you've evolved, right? And then you quickly go, hang on a minute, everyone else has got heaps of problems. And because they're all facades, as you say, and especially people in very high level leadership roles, founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, they are experiencing this, and they're not brave enough to come out and say, hey, I need help. They think that there's something wrong with that. Whereas I believe that what you've created at the Evolved CEO is a very safe space. And I remember when you said to me, hey, Kristian, when we finished the whole program, and you said to me, oh, can you give me can you give me some feedback? And I said, mate, I'm happy to scream this out as loud as I can. And then you said to me, oh yeah, it's quite hard to get people, even when they finished, to come out and be brave enough to say, hey. And in your case, you've managed to do that with a lot of your clients now, who they go, initially they would have been always, oh no, I can't tell anyone that I've been through this. And now they're like, it's very important for me to tell the story so other men, right, can actually come through the program, because you only work with men, correct?
And a lot of our clients' wives. So we're starting to work with a lot of our high-end, high-profile clients, they start doing the work, and then their wife is like, wow, I want to do it. They start researching Tracy, they learn about the healing, the spiritual work, and they just go, I have to do this as well.
Yeah.
And at present, for anybody to work with Tracy and or it's a package, right? We're changing that with our rebranding in the new year. We're going to be launching new things for different audiences. But right now, as the Evolve CEO, is our premium signature offering. It's both of us, because true transformation, you can't work one-dimensionally. And this is why I explained when I did a year-long life coaching and I did all that inner work and all of that, it was amazing from a mindset perspective. But I had to heal my body. I had to find out and reconnect with what is spirituality? What is the spirit and soul? What is it all about? I had to do that healing work. So the true transformation happened when I healed and aligned and started working multidimensionally, mind, body, and soul. And this is why my health has transformed. This is why my mindset, I don't even really call it mindset anymore, because people kind of all put mindset in this basket, right? But it's more around finding your truth. Everybody wants to find their truth, but we are so programmed and conditioned by societal pressures and influence and social media, and it's even happening at a younger age with kids now, that people can't even decipher what's the truth. It's just there's too much noise.
There is too much noise and too much distraction. I agree with you, particularly with our children. I mean, your children are a little bit older than mine, not too much older, but it's, you got teenagers.
Yeah.
Now, right? Like,
yeah.
When we first met, they were
keep them young, mate. Keep them young. Trust me.
Trust me. My daughter is going to be 5 this month in December, and I swear she's already on to 20.
Yeah.
And Leo's 7 going on to 8, and I'm like, I am dreading this, because a lot of my clients have children that are in their teens, and they're just like, Kristian, you have no idea what's coming. So listen, I cannot give you parenting advice, and I cannot give you any form of advice when it comes to children, because I'm still going through that. And the reason why I make that point, you really are a practitioner. That's what I think sets you apart. That is the reason why I decided to work with you and Tracy. And yes, Tracy is amazing in her own right, but together, you guys are phenomenal. And I think that's I remember saying that to you. What I like about this is I get to work with 2 people.
Yeah.
On 2 separate levels. The high energetic, the subconscious. And for me, that is going to sound like a testimonial in many ways. But I only bring amazing people onto the podcast, and that's why you're here. It was a breakthrough experience for me at a very deep level, but it wasn't. It didn't have, like I said earlier, I wasn't looking for significant change. Right, I just needed that 5%. Right, that I could not get with all the other work that I'd done, and for me, that was enough. It was very powerful.
This is what we're attracting now.
Because, and I think people think that you have to break through, you got to be completely broken. No, you were completely broken, and you re-put yourself together, which means you can help anyone along that entire spectrum, right? Because, and I think that's really important for anyone listening who feels like they're just missing that little bit. Right, I know for a fact that you and Tracy can help them overcome that little bit. So you don't have to be completely broken to work with Greg and Tracy. Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we get pigeonholed into, well, I'm okay. Well, hang on a second. Do you feel like you have more to give in this world? That's really the question. And I think that if you say, yeah, I need more fulfillment in my life, then you actually can work with those people. And I almost say that that's the ideal client, right? That's the dream client, because they're people that already get it. There's no convincing. There's no bullshit in it. It's like, am I correct in saying that?
Totally.
Oh, okay, good.
That's been the journey, mate. Is when I first started and I came out, and then I wanted to help other men, I was attracting people who were broken, who were over drinking, who were similar to where I was, right? now we're attracting like some of the most elite businessmen in their industry. And I can't name names and talk companies and all that sort of stuff for obvious reasons. But we're talking people that are probably worth $1 billion, that are seriously successful. But what they're doing, they've done work, but they know there's so much more. These are people who have broken through barriers that 99% of the world's population couldn't even put themselves in a position to. So they're looking for the next level. They're looking for the expansion. They're looking for the spiritual awakening. They're looking for the emotional transformation. And most of the clients that I attract, because I'm the front end of it, they don't really understand, like you did, how powerful Tracy is as a combo. So they're attracted to just what I'm sharing and talking about. And this is what we all have in common. The driven entrepreneurial businessman, what we have in common is because it's programmed into us. It's societal conditioning. It's generational conditioning. We put all of our focus and our energy into becoming successful because we believe the more successful we are, the more happy and fulfilled we'll become. The more people will love us, the more we'll be content. And so many of these successful businessmen have created success and financial abundance like you couldn't believe, but they are really unhappy. They feel lost. They feel isolated. They feel unfulfilled. And their closest relationships are so challenging because in the business arena, they are God. And everybody kind of kisses up to them. So there's not that real, true, authentic conversation going on. But at home with the wife and the kids, they feel like uncomfortable. They feel like the ATM. They feel like that relationship's not working. And it's this massive disconnect of how can I be a king in business, but treated like the pawn at home, and home's making me feel really uncomfortable and frustrated and unappreciated. And I've given them this massive life. So this is the disconnect. So they have created these rules and these conditions in this programming to enable them to become highly successful in a competitive business arena. And they've become highly one-dimensional. So they aren't looking at life as a multi-dimensional being. They're not looking, they need to do the emotional transformation work. They need to connect with their spiritual self. They need to let go of the fear of all of that success disappearing, because they just keep on pushing the goalposts, working harder, more. And in the pursuit of self-actualization, achievement and manifestation is huge.
Yeah.
But fulfillment and healing is even bigger. And men don't understand that achievement's masculine and fulfillment's feminine. So they're over masculine, they're over ego, they're over masculine, and they're wondering why there's no fulfillment. But feminine and healing feels innately like a weakness. It's just like, I don't need to heal. I'm king of the castle. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate these powerful men. And Tracy and I have the ability to have real, deep, honest conversations with these people and heal them at a level that they can't even comprehend, so that they can be astronomically more than what they already are in the business arena. Their marriages change, their relationships change. They feel better about themselves inside. It's kind of my story of the what's seen on the outside versus what's felt on the inside. We'll magnify that by 1 million. This is the level, right? Because they have created what society's told us all, that we need to become successful and we need to sacrifice and do whatever we can to become successful. And then when we become successful, we just go, where's the love and happiness gone? That was supposed to be waiting for me. It was supposed to just be sitting here waiting for me. And
where did you go?
Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? I think I want to just touch on a couple of things you said. One, feminine energy, and it's really interesting because I think that's where a lot of successful men are really unsuccessful, right? Because it's kind of like, whereas, for example, I can only refer back to me, and my listeners know 85% of my customer base is women, right? And that's because I have this feminine energy, because I'm very comfortable with myself and I'm very confident about who I am, what I stand for. But it's actually deeper than that. It's a total respect, right, for diversity, inclusion, acceptance. And that's that feminine energy, that empathy, right? But I then want to touch on this concept of the more syndrome, right? Like I call it the more syndrome. I talk about it all the time. We are conditioned, as you say, to have more, be more, desire more. But if you're not aligned and you don't have this inner balance with your inner self, right, or your higher self, right, you can never have fulfillment, because more attracts more pain, more frustration, more anger, right? And the wonderful thing about you, Greg, and I love listening to you when you speak, and I know our listeners are thinking the same thing as I am. What they don't maybe have a complete understanding of, even though you've explained it really easily, you are a practitioner. You have lived through this. It's why you can relate to the top 5%, because in your corporate career, you were successful in your life, and now in business, you're successful, right? And like any great entrepreneur, you've identified the market need through your own pain and suffering.
Totally.
Right. And I think that I know this is going to sound like it's an advertorial or a testimonial, but it is so true. And I think anyone listening today, I'm just reaffirming what you should be hearing, because it's a really powerful message. And it's that breakdown to breakthrough that you referred to earlier that really got me excited. And it's that next level, right? Sometimes we have to go deep. And trust me, when you work with Greg and Tracy, particularly with Greg, you go deep, right? Most people end up in tears, right? But the important part is it's about letting that inner self out. So, Greg, I think what's important to me is that our listeners get a really deep understanding of who you are, so that they can actually connect with you. And I encourage everybody to connect with all of our top achievers. So I want to ask you this question. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in your business right now, and how are you tackling that? So let's move away from what the clients are facing, but what is your biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment, and how are you tackling that?
100%. So what's happening right now is Tracy and I have gone through a complete rebranding, personal branding. I actually just did a soft launch of my personal branding website. So what I'd done is I spent the last 3 years putting all my effort behind building the Evolved CEO brand. And what I needed to do was build my own personal brand, because we're in a crowded marketplace where it's the personal brand that gets the cut through, because it's the authentic self, right? Mm-hmm. So Tracy and I want to work with world leaders. We want to work at the top end of the marketplaces, because we believe deep down on every core of our being that what Tracy and I do, we are able to work with, hold the energy and the space for the most powerful men. And as you know, a lot of these powerful men like you, they've got extremely powerful souls. They've got multi-dimensional support. Their spiritual being, they've just got this different level of ability that they channel, right? And if they work with somebody who's below that, they're not going to get what they need. Yeah. They need to be able to work with people who can work above their level of energy, spirit, emotions, the whole 9 yards. So one of our really highly successful clients, he's like, you are the first person in my life that I can ever have these conversations with, because he is an absolute genius. Like in the business arena, nobody would question him. So he never has those real, deep, authentic conversations, or a person that can help him unpack what he's dealing with, is because everybody just looks up to him and goes, oh. So when you change or you evolve or you help these powerful men, and women are powerful, don't get me wrong. But right now my focus is on these highly powerful men, is because my mission is to evolve the masculine ego. The masculine ego has created everything in this world. Every system has been created from the masculine ego. Yeah. A lot of powerful women have become highly masculine in the ego so that they can compete in the arena.
And they can fit in, like, because
100%.
and that's not what needs to happen.
No.
Right?
What we need to do is the powerful masculine ego needs to awaken the powerful feminine within. And when you awaken and become your most powerful masculine and feminine, so that you can be multidimensional, you can be a leader in business, but you can use your authentic heart to have a beautiful relationship with your wife and listen, and you can be that different person. The ripple effect of change, the vibration that happens, the frequency, the energy, all of that sort of stuff. If I help somebody who's responsible for 50,000 employees and he shifts the energy at the top of a company and it starts to flow right down, that's a ripple effect like nothing else, right?
Correct.
That ripple effects into those people. It just becomes this different demeanor, this culture, this just way of being. And then that'll ripple into other people. So for Tracy, to answer your question, I've kind of gone off track. The biggest challenge that we've had in our business is I wasn't differentiating ourselves through Tracy and I's personal brand. I was trying to pump this Evolve CEO. Now, the Evolve CEO is incredible because it is the combination of Tracy and I coming together. But Tracy and I are about to launch our personal brand to show the world stage truly what Greg Gilles is capable of and as an individual, and what Tracy is capable of as an individual. And that will enable us to track these powerful, powerful people at the top.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting there is I would just want to talk about the ripple effect. And I think what's really important for our audience to understand is that the opportunity when you shape and change, or actually not change, when you shape and transform these very strong, powerful, masculine men at the top, you free up and release all the women and let them rise to the top. You know, like, totally. and I can again, I'll only speak from my experience. You know, people find it genuinely interesting, other men that I know, and they're like, Kristian, you are surrounded by women all the time. I'm like, I only have 3 men out of 87 staff that work for me. All my companies that I own are female-led. I'm just the chair. You know, I write the strategy. I encourage them to fail and learn, and you know, I'm there to mentor and guide them because I believe in them. But also, you know, like people say to me, "Oh, but you have a daughter?" I'm like, "Yeah, and my daughter is going to be everything she wants to be." You know, I'm just going to put the pieces in for her and give her the puzzles, but she's got to work it out for herself, just like my son, right? You know, see, and for me, I think because I've always had this, you know, very high soul vibration. We won't get into this too deeply. Tracy and I got into it. You know, I never forget the day that Tracy first worked with me, and she's like, "I'm not sure I can work with you." Do you remember this? And she's like, "You're like on another level," right? And it's funny because 2-3 years down the track, when we talked, she's like, "Kristian, there are other people like you in the world," and it's incredible. Like, and they, you know, they're all, you know, when you now come to terms with it, it was a really cool experience because Tracy she's, you know, for those that haven't quite met Tracy, listen to the podcast. That's her to a T, right? And but it was a really interesting journey because even though I'd always known that I had this gift, I didn't really know it until I worked with both of you. You know, you helped me achieve those 5% breakthroughs I couldn't get, and Tracy helped me awaken the giant within. I know that's taking, you know, Tony Robbins' book title, but that really what it is, and I think that's what it does for people. It allows you to awaken this higher soul vibration, and that allows you to connect with people on a much deeper level. And that's what you're talking about. And I'm here excited. Right? I'm here excited. On the other end, you know, you're in Brisbane, I'm in Adelaide. We couldn't be any further apart. And I'm excited by it. So congratulations, because I've actually seen the evolution, because you and I haven't spoken for about a year, right? Yeah. And because of our schedules, but I can see it. And you know, and I think that's really important for someone like me to also see it and go, wow, because you're constantly growing. And I think that's another thing that all successful people want. You want to work with someone that's always growing. You don't want to be going, oh, well, you're really good at this, and I'm going to come and grab this off you. And I think that's what you bring, because there's a lot of it that's intuitive. Okay. And you do a lot of intuitive advisory, and it's quite deep and meaningful. A lot of people don't know what that means. Can you just explain to me?
Yeah, totally.
What you mean? I think that's really important for people to understand.
So this is a good segue, is because even 2 years ago, even 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Tracy and I couldn't work with the most powerful people in the world because we weren't at that level. And people need to understand that this is more energetic and spiritual than physical. Like who we are in the metaphysical is just infinite compared to who we are in the physical, right? So we work on ourselves every day. We are constantly working and healing and tuning in and evolving our intuitive abilities. And whenever I'm working with a client, I'm channeling my spiritual gifts of communication and manifestation through my clients so I can connect with them on a deep energetic level. So once we do the healing and alignment through the Evolved CEO work with our clients, and I break them free of the bullshit, and I help them awaken to their own truth and let go of all the fear. There's really only two emotions. There's fear and love. The masculine ego is driven by fear. The feminine is all about love. So these powerful men are constantly driven by fear, right? So you break away from that fear. You break away from all those narratives. You help them wake up. I then create this deeply, deeply trusting connection with these most powerful men that they've never had in their life. And I can literally help them channel their own intuition and guide them into the next step of what they do. Now, a lot of this next step triggers the fear, triggers the ego, because it's not what they're used to doing. It's different, right? They need to let go. They need to go, it's okay if I'm not at the helm of the business, or you know what I mean? So this is where the real high level transformation happens, is once the healing and alignment's done, we move into growth and manifestation, and we help people and we help these clients literally run and build their life in line with their highest spiritual self. So not controlled by the programs of the ego around I should, I need to, blah, 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 blah. It's letting go of all of that and literally working in alignment with their highest, the reason why they're here, their soul's divine purpose. And when people are working in alignment with their soul's divine purpose, you've heard of the word flow state, right? Take that to the stars, because this is next level. This is like everything just comes in. This is manifestation. This is working in alignment with the universe, with multidimensional beings, being highly in tune with your relationship with God. And when people are operating in that level, but they already have the influence in the physical and they already have the resources and the foundation, this is world-changing people, right? This is them just pivoting and going, I'm going to make some real change in this world. Because that's what I'm really here to do.
And I think it's really important, in case there's any skeptics and doubters, this is not a cult.
I can clear that out of them.
No, but you know what I mean? No, it's just that, look, I love being a skeptic, okay? It's my productive paranoia, as Jim Collins calls it, right? But what it really is that I'm a questioner. I always question. But this is not some kind of cult, right? I think it's really important. This is an individual. This is you.
This is one-to-one.
Connecting, no, but it's you connecting to your higher self. It's not, and I think that's really important, because some people, I want everyone that's listening, I want them to understand our physical is a very small part of who we are in this universe.
It's tiny.
And so many people don't know, and people say to me all the time, Kristian, you get this, you've been doing this your whole life. It's like, no. I've only tapped into like a few percent, right? And now I recognize that my success doesn't come from here. It comes from here, right? It comes from my heart center. It comes from who I am as an individual. And it's connecting, right, earth to universe all the time. And just being, and a lot of it, in leadership, when we talk about level 5 leadership, it's about being self-aware. So I always say to the skeptic, be aware of self. And if you start to become aware, if you can sit quietly, and I know you're speaking, so thinking, if you can sit quietly and just pay attention to what's around you and the noises, you're already starting to tap into, right, what you could be. But so many people don't stop long enough because of the noise, the distractions, and all the other bullshit, the dirt, the baggage that they have carried. I know it sounds like I'm doing your thing, right? But the thing is, this is true. This is real. And I want people to know that, right? And so I'm going to give you a right to reply to that. And then I want to ask you another question.
Well, it really comes down to people think they're listening to their intuition, but they're not. They're listening to their ego fooling them that it's the intuition so that it can keep doing more of what it's doing and justify all of the behaviors. Now, are some people intuitive? 100%. But does the world hit us like a ton of bricks with everything we look at that triggers the ego, that triggers the fear, the doubt, the what's next, all that sort of stuff constantly? Even the people at the top. The scariest thing with the people at the top, these high-powered CEOs, business founders, these people that we want to work with, is they actually feel so isolated. They feel so lost and they feel so stuck, is because to the world and the society that's been conditioned on success means everything, they've made it. So they've got nothing to complain about. But what's next? And this is when they go, oh, maybe I need to do some spiritual work or some energy work, or maybe I need to go and do a ayahuasca journey, or because they want to now expand their consciousness. They want to evolve. They want to wake up. So when these powerful men who have created so much success are now on this journey of expansion and consciousness and wanting to truly awaken to their highest gifts, they need to be very careful, because they are entering into a space that is so dangerous if not done correctly. And Tracy would have spoken about negative entities and negative energy. Yes. So we actually help them do this expansion without drawing or creating a vortex of bringing in stuff that they do not want in their field or attached to them, right? Even ayahuasca journeys, if you don't have a shaman that can work at the highest level to protect you from the negative entities that come in, because when you do that sort of stuff, you are losing your sovereignty. You are literally opening up and just saying, I am now opening myself up for anything to come in. And when you talk about our spiritual level, the metaphysical out of the physical, it's infinite. It's massive. You don't want to mess with that stuff. So again, it's not a cult. But to be fair, people that just go, I don't believe in spiritual, then don't call me. I never used to, but holy shit. Now I'm just like, that's the truth. What I used to call woo-woo hippie bullshit is actually the truth. So I avoided my truth for most of my life until I got a slap around the face and I had to wake up and start doing this deep inner healing work. And now it's just like, life doesn't have to be that hard.
No, life actually shouldn't be hard at all. Yes, we're going to be throwing curveballs and roadblocks and challenges. But, as you know, I preach the whole philosophy that challenges are opportunities. Roadblocks are opportunities. It's a mindset, but it's also how you approach living. People often say to me, Kristian, you have a lot going on in life. I'm like, yeah, so do you. It's just different. Like, my tenacity, my grit, my resilience is much higher than most people because of what I've been through. And because I've been able to break through it, release it, not carry it, right? It gives me freedom and it gives me fulfillment. I recently, and just quickly, I got married finally after being, with Lucy putting up with me for 9 years and 2 children. And, I had a lot of guests send us really beautiful messages after the wedding. But a friend of ours just sent us a message the other day saying, it was really moving. I won't say who it was, but they're very successful. They've got global brands, and it's someone I mentored when they were starting up, and we become really good friends. And she said to me, "Your relationship is like what we all want." And she said a few more things, but it got me thinking. I thought, really? And I am. I always say that I'm the luckiest person alive. I have, the woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with, who understands me, because if you don't understand me, I'm impossible to get along with. But understands me, and I understand her. And why? Because I'll never forget when I first met Lucy. I walked in and I just took one look at her and I went, "That's the woman I want to marry." And I had never uttered those words as a bachelor into his mid-30s, who owned bars and clubs and restaurants and shit tons of different businesses internationally. That was the last thing on my mind.
That's the inner knowing.
But I've had to work on it, because if I wanted to seek out success, the first thing that would suffer would be my family life. And that's one of the great things about the evolution that you take people on a journey through. Again, I already knew some of this, but it was that 5%. It was about really connecting and telling me, hey, and for me, the biggest thing that I actually got out of the whole program, I think this is really important, is I have a really high manifestation ability. And I never knew that. Like, I knew, but I didn't know, and that's what knowing, because you don't know what you don't know. That's what gave me 100% lift. Tracy and I spent years, almost 2 years working on that. And she said to me, she goes, "You're off on another chart." Right. And I know I am. So, and I know now that I tap into this and I work on it. And when I set my sights to something, it flows. And it's not a flow state. It happens. It happens fast, right? I turn around and I say, okay, I need another strategy client. Within 3 weeks, boom, boom, they just drop. And people look at me and they're like, "That's not normal." And it's like, no, it's not normal. And I don't do any fancy lead gen. It's just I put it out to the universe. I focus on it, right? And it comes, right? Now, that was your wife really picking that up and saying, "Wow, you need to work on this, Kristian, because this is insane." And it is. I mean, it's really insane. And sometimes I kind of have to pinch myself and say, why am I not focusing more on this? But we only get given what we want, what we ask for, when we're ready too.
Yeah.
And you got to be in alignment, right? So, Greg, I want to ask you this question. Tell me a customer, right, or a client that's touched your heart, and tell me a little bit about how that changed your business. You work with all these amazing people. Surely one of them. Yeah, but who is there? Someone that really made you realize, wow, I'm doing exactly what I was destined to do, and why was that?
Oh, I could tell you dozens and dozens of stories like that, but literally all of the clients that we work with that really commit to the process and go on the journey, they come in, there's a lot of trust that needs to be built. They're really fearful of what's going to happen. It's quite scary to be vulnerable for a lot of these men who have just kind of been really hardcore masculine all of their life. And it's around about, so the Evolve CEO, we work with clients anywhere from 4 to 6 months. And it's always around about that third or that fourth month that it's like this massive consolidation of all the work happens. And it's like they just kind of truly awaken. Like, they have so much change and epiphanies and ahas and wake up moments, but they just come. It's kind of like they come out of their shell and they just start changing everything in their life. Their relationships just go through the roof. Their wives are messaging us and just like, "I don't know what you've done with him, but thank you so much." And that's when they're like, "Do you think I can work with you?" So I can't really pinpoint one client, but I kind of want to go back to that story of I can only work with the level of client based on the level of work that I've done for myself. So every single year that we've been doing this work, and every 10, 20 clients that we work with, because we only work with about 20 clients a year, every time we work with those clients, they have an evolution. I have an evolution. I get more spiritual guidance and connection to be able to work at the next level and the next level and the next level. So I can't just say one client. It's all of our clients has been part of my journey, which is leading me to a stage where I'm just working with higher level clients more and more and more and more. And it's, again, I have to come back to the ripple effect. It's like Tracy and I can't do this work for tens of thousands of people. It is a one-to-one. We are individuals at an energetic, at a spiritual, at a soul level. We are individuals. You can't do this deep work in a group environment. We can do some amazing deep work in a group environment, but I'm talking about those 1%ers that you're talking about, like understanding who you are as an individual soul and that sort of stuff. So we want to work with people that when we transform them, they will go and touch tens of thousands of people's lives. So I didn't really answer your question, because there is not one person, because everybody has been part of this journey. And Tracy and I are just warming up. Like, we are only just begun. When we build our personal brands and we actually get the opportunity to connect with some of these highly influential and powerful people, we see it. We see it all the time. We can read their energy. We can see that there are so many people out there that have done a lot of work, but there's more. There's so much more. But it's getting hard because there's so many people saying, I'm a spiritual healer, I'm a spiritual coach, I'm a mindset coach, I'm a this, I'm a that people are getting a bit confused, right? Oh. So this kind of ties into one of the last questions, is Tracy and I need to elevate our personal brand onto the world stage for us to fulfill our mission here in life, which is to work with world leaders. There's no other way.
And I think what's really important is that, you've been doing this for a while and you're building it to last, not building it for scale. I think that's really important, because when you're building trust and credibility.
So the intuitive advisor, which will showcases on my website, where I'm going personally. So Tracy and I, we built our personal brands underneath the Evolved CEO. Now we're building our individual personal brands. She's going to be building programs and so forth to help other healers and spiritual coaches attune to the highest level so that they can do the level of work that she does. That will create a ripple effect like you've never seen in this world, when we've got healers who have healed their own shit, because a lot of healers, they take on all the negative energy. They heal somebody else, but they become the vessel and they hold on to all of it and it weighs them down. Tracy can help them free all of that dark energy and entity, right? So my personal brand is, when I work with these high powerful men in the Evolved CEO, if they want to continue working with me, I'm going to attune them to be starting to work on businesses that actually make massive change in the world, that are aligned with their soul divine gifts. And I want to align with people who are actually going to walk their soul or spiritual path in this world and use their influence and use their energy and do things that create a massive impact. And I will work with them inside those businesses. I will do joint ventures or business partnerships, and I will become their trusted intuitive advisor and mentor to make sure that they fulfill on their biggest potential, right? That's not going to be Greg Gilles up in lights. I'm going to be the guy behind the guy who's already up in lights in a financial sense, and now he can just pivot all of that emphasis and all of that influence and resources into creating world change. Because let's face it, if the world doesn't evolve, it's going to end up in a big, big, ugly mess. We can see it.
Absolutely. I tell you what I love. What you're doing and where you're going. It's really interesting listening to that. It's what I do with women. Right? It's really interesting. Listening to you, I'm just like, wow. It's what I do with women clients. I allow them to be the best version of themselves, and most people have no idea who my clients are. The ones that openly are in our Evolved Mastermind program. Interesting. you're evolved and CEO and we're evolved, right? And I didn't even put two and two together when we did that. But what's really remarkable, Greg, is the conviction and the authority in which you speak. And that's, I, as someone who's tuned to this, I love that. I really do. And I know more than anybody how hard both of you work, right? Like, when I say hard work, I don't mean hard work grinding and hustling, that shit, right? That's not you guys at all. It's how much effort and energy that you put into learning and evolving, right? Like since the day I've met you, you are it's just this inner burning spirit that says, I need to do this. And it's why? Because you're purpose driven. I think that's really important that people understand that. We are going to run out of time, and this has been an epic conversation. But I want to ask you one more question before we go into the fast 5 in 5. What's the most important thing? And this is going to be hard, but what's the most important thing that you've learned in your life?
Vulnerability.
Okay.
100%, and 100%.
What was it like before you learned that?
I was always scared. I was always fearful. I always felt trapped and stuck. I always felt like I was just doing for the sake of doing. This is a big thing, right? Doing versus being. When you're not willing to, when you're so scared of opening up and being vulnerable about what's really truly going on, it's a pretty dark trap. It makes you feel stuck. And this is why a lot of these powerful men who have grown to the top of these businesses, who feel like they've created these walls around themselves where they have to maintain a certain level of status and facade and like they've got it all together, but they don't. That's a scary place to be.
It is. So what's life like now?
It's always still challenging.
No, but now that you've understood vulnerability and you can live in that space, what's life like?
Life now is like I've never thought that I would ever have in my life, but it's way different than what I thought it was going to end up being, because old Greg had these pictures of the mansions and the cars and the travel and just Greg is successful, right? And I could have followed that path and I could have had so many more millions of dollars behind me, but that wasn't my path because that would have just ended up in destruction, right? So now I'm just free. I am really, really free. And to be free and to be your true self and to be doing something that is actually meaningful and in line with who I am at my deepest level, it's hard to explain. You have to just fucking do the work and experience it. And then when you experience it, you're just like, every client is just like, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? It's just like, you wouldn't, same as me. 20 years ago, somebody said to do this. I'd be just like, dream on. I'm drinking beers and playing footy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and by footy, he's referring to rugby.
Rugby.
Let's be really clear. And it's union, okay? Not league. No offense to all the league people, but it is the game played in heaven.
So I feel quite whole. I do. Yeah. I honestly do. And the more I help more people, the more of that I get. This is the universe serving back to me because I'm doing what I'm here to be doing. And I'm getting rewarded in different ways that I didn't even know existed when I had my breakdown. That's why some people, they can't comprehend with some of the stuff that I'm talking about, but there's this inner voice that's just going, he's on to something. You need to kind of go down this path and learn more about what he's saying, is because the mind might be just like, oh, that sounds a bit weird, but there's this intuitive voice that's just like, follow it, because that's the path, right? So many of our clients that come to us, they just go, I don't know why, but all of a sudden, something that you posted popped up on my feed. I watched it and I was like, holy shit, he's talking to me. I need to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
That's you, like what you said before. It's just like, I need another consulting client, put it out to the universe and it comes. Same.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, I want to just let people see a little bit more of you. So we're going to do the fast 5 in 5 because I know that you are time poor, just like I am. So I know that our
not
listeners,
really. I just make out I am.
Oh, no, that's not true. That's not true. But the truth is, I know that everyone is probably thinking, there's no way you guys just spoke for an hour, right? And that's how wonderful that was. So I just want to work through this. So fast 5 in 5. You don't get any time to think about these. I'm just going to ask them and fire them away. Greg Gilles, what makes you feel inspired?
Communicating.
Okay. What is the best compliment that you have ever received?
You're doing a good job.
That's probably your wife.
Yeah.
If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Transforming the masculine ego.
Excellent. And best book recommendation?
Ooh. Atomic Habits.
Okay. Good book. And if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
It would be Tracy and I advertising the Evolved CEO, helping people create success, love, and happiness.
Awesome.
Because that's my purpose.
Greg, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you. More importantly, it's been really bloody good talking to you and catching up and seeing you in person rather than an email or anything else. We need to do this more often. And I want to say that I can see how you are evolving. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. I can see the transformation. I can see the growth. And that is probably why I've got this really big grin on my face because I want you, and I've always wanted you to be so much more because of what you can do for people. And you know me well enough to know that when I say that, I truly mean it. And you know, I have a lot of time for you and Tracy, you know, being very, very important to my life. So, I encourage everybody that listens to the show, that subscribes to it, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on one of the other platforms like Spotify and Apple iTunes. I encourage you, connect with Greg. We're going to have Greg's details and his LinkedIn URL in the show notes. So I encourage you to go to the show notes and connect with him. Greg has a very active LinkedIn. So if you are going to connect with him, let him know that you listen to the podcast. So you got a higher chance of being connected. Otherwise, you may not get in. But Greg, thank you to you and Tracy for the investment that you make in other people. I know that ripple effect will deliver and is delivering. I also want to make a massive shout out to my team at the Business Growth Mindset at Growth Outsource Media Sociale Argentum for their support and their resilience to put up with someone like me all the time, but also for all of them to be on the same mission as Greg and I are on, and that's to transform the world one person at a time through other people. And I think that's really important. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always. Live with purpose. And once again, Greg Gilles from the Evolved CEO, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate your time.
Cheers. Are you ready to start taking action on your business? Would you like to spend more time with your family? Then call 1300-643-229 and start building momentum right now. I know you're busy. In fact, you are so busy that you don't have time to work on your business or yourself. often tossing and turning at night, worrying about the how-tos and the cash flow. How on earth can you possibly get off the hamster wheel so that you can take a helicopter view to see where you'll be in 90 days, 1 year, or 3 years from now? In this program, I will take you from sleepless nights to blissful sleep. You'll have more time with your family and you will have the clarity and direction so you can grow and flourish. Call 1-300-643-229 now and start building momentum.